The blizzard howled like a vengeful ghost across the Colorado Rockies that fateful December night in 1887, each gust sharp enough to slice through a man's resolve. Elias Thorne stood frozen in his cabin doorway, the lantern in his calloused hand flickering against the onslaught as he stared at the woman crumpled on his porch steps. Margaret Ellis, the widowed schoolteacher from Willow Bend who'd turned heads and tongues wagging in equal measure, lay there like a storm-tossed rose, her sodden calico dress hugging curves that the mountain chill couldn't fully conceal. Behind him, his solitary cabin loomed empty. Ahead, 3 days of unrelenting whiteout loomed, an isolation that could shatter reputations or ignite long-buried fires. Elias had sworn a solemn vow to his dying mother at age 17, to save himself for a woman who truly deserved his heart. But as Margaret's hazel eyes cracked open, locking onto his with a raw plea that echoed the wind's fury, that vow felt like iron shackles tightening around his soul. The untouched rancher, now 32, faced his crossroads. Would duty shield him, or would it finally set him free? Not every chain is forged in steel. Some are woven from grief, honor, and the last words of the woman who raised you alone. Elias Thorne learned this truth kneeling by his mother's bedside in their modest cabin near Durango. After his father fell to a bandit's bullet, Eliza Thorne had been mother, provider, and guiding light. With her final, ragged breath, her frail hand clutched his. "Elias," she whispered, "promise me you'll wait for the right one. Not like your pa, chasing shadows in those godforsaken saloons. Hold out for real love." A boy of 17 doesn't deny his mother's dying wish, but oaths to the departed can morph into cages for the living. By 32, Elias was a towering 6'3" frame of Colorado hardiness, his hands scarred from wrangling cattle on his modest 600-acre spread. It wasn't riches, but it was honest toil from sunup to sundown, leaving little room for the ache of solitude gnawing at his ribs like a persistent winter frost. Folks in Willow Bend whispered the untouched rancher when he passed, never to his face. They'd seen him nod politely to the dance hall girls, avert his eyes when Widow Jenkins leaned too close, pour his coffee, bolt from talks veering toward bedroom matters. What they missed were the sleepless nights he spent gazing at the rafters, questioning if his mother's words were a blessing or a curse. Margaret Ellis knew isolation all too well. 3 years widowed since tuberculosis claimed her husband, she'd spent those years molding young minds in the one-room schoolhouse while her own dreams withered. Childless and alone at 45, her beauty was the quiet kind that unfolded like dawn over the peak's raven hair streaked with silver, pinned in a neat bun that begged men to imagine it unbound. Hazel eyes brimming with the wisdom of late-night reads and unspoken longings. She scraped by in a cramped attic room above the school, her teacher's pay barely covering the rent, all while dodging the town's rumor mill that painted her as too alluring to be left unchecked. But rumors mean nothing when a Colorado blizzard rewrites your fate. On December 22nd, 1887, the cold that turned spittle to shards and mules to statues gripped the land. Little Tommy Wilkins was raging with fever on his folks' homestead 7 miles out, and Doc Harlan was snowed over in Leadville. Margaret rode out with remedies and hot soup, reaching the boy just as the storm's vanguard plunged the mercury. Tommy pulled through by midday, but the return journey turned hellish blinding whiteouts and winds shrieking like banshees. Her mare, Daisy, battled drifts for 5 miles before snapping a leg in a concealed ravine. The crack echoed like rifle fire, and Margaret knew, on foot 2 miles from safety, with dusk descending like judgment. The next hour and a half was a war of wills hers against the Rockies' merciless grip. Snow invaded her boots, drenched her coat, numbed her fingers to stumps. Her breath came in ragged stabs as she slogged through waist-deep powder. When Elias's cabin emerged from the veil like a hallucination, she doubted her vision. The golden lamplight was a beacon too perfect, too vital. She staggered the final 40 yards and slumped against his door, her knock a feeble tap. The door swung open, and she gazed up into the steadiest blue eyes she'd ever known. Elias looked down at Willow Ben's most talked-about widow and felt a fracture deep within not his principles, but the frozen barrier around his heart, built plank by plank since his mother's passing. Margaret shivered uncontrollably, her lips bluish against porcelain skin, snowflakes adorning her lashes like fragile jewels. Her dress, that prim teacher's garb, clung revealingly in the wet. "Please," she gasped through chattering teeth. Elias didn't pause. No decent soul turns away a freezing woman, town talk be damned. He lifted her effortlessly. She was light as a spring folan, carried her inside. As the door shut, sealing out the gale, both knew their worlds had tilted irrevocably. 3 days, that's how long the tempest would imprison them in a space tighter than a saddle cinch, armed only with propriety, solitude, and the dawning realization that temptation can wear salvation's mask. There's a raw honesty in a blizzard. It peels away facades. Maybe it's the vanishing of society under endless white, or how a hearth fire becomes life's sole luxury. Or perhaps, facing mortality, propriety crumbles. Elias's cabin was a lone man's domain. One room with a stone hearth, a cot against the wall, a table for one. He draped her dripping coat by the flames and fetched dry Gubra woolen shirt draping to her shins, socks climbing to her calves. "Turn round," she said, voice gaining strength as warmth seeped in. He complied, facing the log wall, but his mind, dormant for decades, ignited. He envisioned her unbuttoning, the fabric slipping from pale skin. "All right," she murmured. He turned, and his breath hitched. Margaret by the fire was reborn. His shirt couldn't mask her full figure, her hair cascading in wet curls past her shoulders. She seemed softer, more alive, her eyes holding a mature fire that screamed woman, not maiden. "Thank you," she said softly. They ate his simple stew in heavy quiet, fire crackling, wind wailing. But silence between strangers, especially man and woman, breeds peril. It invites stolen glances, simmering awareness. "The whole town's buzzing about you," Margaret ventured, setting down her tin mug. Elias flushed. "I figure they are. They call you the untouched rancher." The label lingered like gunsmoke. Elias gripped his mug, jaw set. "What they say ain't their affair." She leaned in, hazel eyes mirroring the blaze. "Is it true?" He could have denied it, should have. But the storm, her unflinching gaze, unlocked him. "Swore to my ma on her deathbed. Said I'd wait for the worthy one. Felt right back then." Margaret paused, then, 32 years, and you've honored it?" Her hand bridged the table, covering his rough one. The contact seared like a brand. "Makes you either Wyoming's noblest or its biggest fool." He met her eyes, heart pounding like a stampede. "Or both." Outside, the gale persisted. Inside, a warmer storm brewed. Day 2 dawned fiercer, but trouble rode in on horseback. Elias was chopping cordwood out back when hooves thudded through the flurry 3 riders, purposeful in the maelstrom. He spotted Caleb's bay mare through the snow. Caleb Voss owned the Silver Spur Saloon and its underbelly of sins. At 48, he'd thickened with age and soured with spite, especially toward Margaret. For months, he'd hounded her with unwanted suitors, gifts, wilted flowers, pushy dinners, promises of security that made her stomach turn. "Hold up there," Caleb bellowed, voice like gravel. "You got my property inside." Elias emerged, axe in hand, not yet threatening. Caleb flanked by Zeke Harlan and Buck Finley, local bruisers paid in rotgut and coin. "Don't know about no property, Voss." Caleb's cheeks burned redder than the cold. "The teacher her horse's carcass in the draw, tracks lead here. She's been gone since yesterday. The town's in a panic." Through the frosted window, Elias glimpsed Margaret in his shirt, hair tousled, vulnerable in his space. A fierce protectiveness surged, startling in its heat. She sought shelter. That's neighborly kindness. Caleb's guffaw was vile. Kindness? Untouched rancher finally snagged a dame. Huh? And a well-ridden one at that. The slur landed like a lash, igniting Elias's blood. Something primal snapped, not tied to his vow, but to defending his own. You'll take that back, Voss, or else. Caleb hawked spit that sizzled in the snow. Or what? Shoot me over some faded widow? Boy, I'm Savon, you the trouble-breaking, you and easy. Elias leveled the axe, but grabbed his nearby rifle instead, chambering around with a thunderous click. Apologize. Now. Wind howled, tension crackled. Caleb's hand twitched toward his holster, and chaos erupted. Elias's first shot clipped Zeke's arm, tumoring him from the saddle. The second mangled Buck's drawing hand before he could fire. Caleb's gun was rising when Elias's bullet grazed his hat brim, singeing his hair. Next one's fatal. Caleb blanched whiter than the drifts. He'd banked on the untouched rancher folding, not unleashing a Rocky's hardened fury. This ain't done, he snarled, wheeling away. It is, Elias shot back as they vanished into the white. As Elias re-entered, face etched with violence's echo, he realized the boy of promises was dead. In his place, a man forged for battle and for her. Margaret stood at the window, having witnessed his shift from gentle to guardian. You could have died, she whispered. Some risks are worth it. Her eyes burned with no fear, only bold want. What am I worth to you, Elias? The query dangled like a dare. He set the rifle down, hands shaking from fading adrenaline to rising peril. Everything. Margaret stepped close, barefoot on the planks, firelight turning his shirt sheer, shadows teasing. Your ma's vow. What if the right woman's not what you pictured? Elias traced her cheek, tender as new snow. What if she's been here all along, and fear blinded me? I'm no innocent, Elias. 45, widowed. I've known a man's arms in 3 years of empty nights. He cupped her face. Maybe we're precisely what the other lacks. Tears welled in her eyes, not sorrow, but release. I haven't felt wanted in years. Sometimes I forget I'm a woman, not just a relic. Margaret, you're stunning inside and out. You steal my breath. She chuckled, a melody amid the roar. A poet in a rancher. Takes a right spark. She tiptoed, lips grazing his. Prove it. Their kiss started gently, exploratory, then blazed like a prairie fire. Elias enveloped her, and she yielded with a sigh that shattered his restraint. When they parted, breathless, storms far from done, she husked. Neither are we, he vowed. What followed wasn't clumsy or hurried. Despite Elias's novelty, Margaret led with grace, teaching him reverence in touch, whispers, the sacred dance of bodies. She showed desire's gentleness, passion's holiness not as his mother intended, but as two souls merging. By fire's glow, as winds battered, Elias learned some vows to be breaking for truer bonds. Margaret found redemption in a man who cherished her as divine yet untamed, like Colorado's wild heart. They slept entwined, dreams free of loneliness for the first time. Dawn broke silvery, storm spent. Elias woke to Margaret's head on his chest, her raven tresses fanned like midnight silk. He marveled at this enigma who'd upended his world. She stirred, eyes meeting his with morning's doubt. Regrets, only that it took this blizzard. She beamed, radiant. Storms passed. Reality awaits. They dressed languidly, resuming roles rancher and teacher, storm survivors. But all had shifted. His gaze lingered on her, pinning her hair. Her fingers fumbled buttons on her damp dress. Now what? She asked. Elias pondered. Depends on you. But I won't hide this. I've lived half lives too long. She gazed at the blanketed world. No secrets for me either. I've hidden enough. Good, he declared. I'll court you openly, before God and Willow Bend. And when you're ready, I'll ask you to marry me. Surprise lit her face. No fear of scandal, Your Honor. He knelt, clasping her hands. Scandal's their problem. Spent years chasing ghost approval. Yours and mine, that's all. Through joyful tears, Margaret whispered, yes. 5 months on, under June's first son, Elias Thorne wed Margaret Ellis in Willow Bend's little chapel. The town packed, some joyful, others gawking at the untouched rancher claiming his match. Caleb Voss had skedaddled to Nevada come March, pride shot and grudges buried. As Margaret glided down the aisle in ivory lace, Elias shed the last of his chains. His mother hadn't meant eternal solitude, but waiting for this love worth 3 decades. Their wedding night in the cabin that birthed their union, Margaret murmured, no more tempests, love just light. Elias, schooled in love's tempests, smiled, drawing her near. Storms will come, life promises that, but we'll face them side by side. Outside, Colorado's sky arched boundless, thunder a distant echo not warning, but testament that beauty blooms post-storm. What do you think, did Elias do right breaking his vow for love, or should honor have won out? Share your take in the comments. Where do you stand on promises from the past versus seizing the moment? I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you'd have done as Boots.